Welcome, imaginary friends, to Recall Rewatch, where I revisit movies from the past. I will challenge myself to recall details of movies that I haven't seen in years. Then I will rewatch the movies, and we can all laugh at just how much I got wrong. Next movie on our list. The English Patient. Not a pick-me-up kind of movie. Not a heartwarming affair. Came out, I don't know when The English Patient came out. 1995? Stars Ralph Fiennes, Kristen Scott Thomas, as well as Julianette Binoche. Tells the story of an Englishman who is in Africa?
My brother's in North Africa. He says it's hot.
Really? It's hot in Africa?
It's not a put on a Sunday afternoon and kind of doze in front of the couch kind of movie. Ralph Fiennes' character, I think it takes place during World War II, and I'm pretty sure it's in Africa. He's like an explorer, or has something to do with the Germans in Africa, either before the war or during the war. He makes maps. I think there's maps involved, but I think Kristen Scott Thomas is the wife of a friend of his, and they have an affair. And he's flying the plane. He's flying her in a plane, and the plane crashes, and she's severely injured. Right, she's injured. He puts her in a cave. He's like, I'll be back. And by the time he gets back, she's long dead. He runs into trouble with the Germans.
The Germans?
I think there's a hotel involved. I don't remember this movie. I don't remember the sequence of events. I don't remember how he gets burned. I thought there was another plane involved, but he ends up getting really badly burned.
I'm still alive, only I'm very badly burned.
He's being cared for by, I want to say, other British people. But Julianette Binoche is French. There's a guy in a turban. Ugh. Anyway, Julianette Binoche, it's like a separate storyline, and she's had a really rough life.
Empty belly lies, rotten smelly lies.
She's taking care of Ralph Fiennes. Oh, Willem Dafoe's in it. And so she's caring for Ralph Fiennes as he kind of is dying. I think that's how it goes. I think he's retelling the story of what happened between him and Kristen Scott Thomas to Juliette Binoche's character. Or maybe she's reading it in a diary. I don't know. And she has a new love interest, and Willem Dafoe shows up. He's got like a drug addiction, and I think he knows Ralph Fiennes somehow. I think Willem Dafoe's missing fingers, and I think it was Ralph Fiennes' fault. And I think Willem Dafoe intends to kill him, but he doesn't. And then Ralph Fiennes dies. It's a very depressing movie, and I haven't seen it in forever. So it's on my list because, there's a Seinfeld bit about The English Patient.
The English Patient, it's so romantic. God, that movie stunk.
And I think it won the Oscar for Best Picture. But I've never questioned whether or not, does it belong on this list? You just go through and you pick all the movies out, and there's my dog barking. I'll let you know what I think. The English Patient came out in 1996. It was based on a novel of the same name. It's directed by Anthony Minghella, who won an Oscar for Best Director. It was actually nominated for 12 Oscars and won 9 of them. Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Supporting Actress for Juliette Binoche. It stars Ralph Fiennes
Raupeher Fiennes
as Count Laszlo de Almazy. I can't pronounce it.
Not gonna work here anymore anyway.
I don't think the characters in the movie pronounce it the same way more than once.
Olmashi.
Count Olmashi.
Almashi.
Olmashi. Count Laszlo de Olmashi.
But he wasn't an Englishman. He was Hungarian. They call him the English Patient because they were confused at the end of the movie.
In Italy, on my medical chart, they read English Patient. Isn't that funny?
So I had some of that details correct. They were making maps in Africa before the war, World War II. There were 2 plane crashes. The first one killed Colin Firth and injured Kristen Scott Thomas. And the second one was when Ralph Fiennes was flying her body out of the desert and he was shot down. And that's when he was burned and became the English Patient. Juliette Binoche was French-Canadian. I was confused didn't understand why she was in the movie in the British Army when she was French. But she was neither British or French. She was from Montreal. Are you still French if you're from Montreal? If you're French-Canadian, is that still French? I don't think so. She was the real protagonist, but I'll talk about that later. This movie is long, 2 hours, 42 minutes, and it feels like it. There wasn't a lot that I took notes on that I liked about this movie, per se. There were a couple good lines. I liked this little bit between Ralph Fiennes and Kristen Scott Thomas.
I once traveled with a guide who was taking me to fire. He didn't speak for 9 hours. At the end of it, he pointed at the horizon and said, "Fire." That was a good day.
And the other one was this line by Kristen Scott Thomas, which I thought was funny.
Will we be all right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yes is a comfort. Absolutely is not.
There were some things I questioned, like how did Hannah spot this bracelet? She wouldn't have been anywhere near it. And, it's just a Hollywood kind of thing where they got her walking up and, stop, don't move, because she's walking into this minefield. And then they show, she was looking for this bracelet of this friend of hers that was killed. That was dumb. She wouldn't have seen that bracelet from so far away. It was in a movie that's supposed to be artistic and not your standard Hollywood fare, it was a very cliche Hollywood kind of thing to put in there. I also didn't like how clueless Colin Firth's character was. It wasn't like Ralph Fiennes was being subtle about the fact that he liked Colin Firth's wife. So that didn't play well for me. The things I hated about this movie, one, there's no way the army would just leave Juliette Binoche behind. They wouldn't spare the extra morphine, the blankets and sheets and all that material. There's no way. In the middle of a war, that would never happen. And in this shot right here, where they're lingering on this letter that Ralph Fiennes has in his journal, they linger on it long enough that you think you're supposed to be able to read it, but they don't linger on it long enough for you to actually read it. And I found that really irritating. And then this shot here at the end, when Ralph Fiennes dies, it would have been perfect if they had just let Juliette Binoche own the scene, right? It's on her face. He's dying. They already set it all up. She's making the perfect facial expression right here. That cut back to him where he's dumb. Ultimately, though, what upset me most about this movie was all the main characters are basically assholes. There's no reason for Ralph Fiennes and Kristen Scott Thomas to fall in love. Neither of them are likable characters. You're not rooting for either one of them. And maybe that's why they end up together, because they make everyone else around them miserable. It's no great loss for Colin Firth. He ends up killing Kristen Scott Thomas at the end, so he's not redeemed either. None of these characters are redeemable. Ultimately, Juliette Binoche is the main character of the movie. She's the real protagonist, and the only character with a soul. So she should have won Best Actress, not Best Supporting Actress. They should have done more to make the movie. It should have been her movie. I digress. So The English Patient, it's hard to argue the Best Picture winner, but I don't know about this one. Unless you're having trouble getting to sleep, I'd take a pass.
Quit telling your stupid story about the stupid desert and just die already. Die!